what I've seen is when I see healthy Christians, whether single or married, that's the most impactful. People who actually like love God, love others, are humble, that serve, that are promoting, those around them. I'm like, that's the impactful people, whether they're married or whether they're single.
Hello and welcome to the Christians Who Date podcast. Kalli, wait, I'm not even through my intro and you're already laughing at me.
Dude, Dre, the way you just flipped your microphone to see if it was on, I mean, we couldn't help but laugh at you. Oh my gosh.
Mic flip. It just
The
got
mic
me.
flip.
It
It was
instantly started recording, and Andrea looks down at her microphone and flips it up and then says, "Hello and welcome."
I think it's those things
to the Christians Who Date podcast.
It's like those things about you, Dre, that are so endearing.
It's true.
It's true.
Andrea has a lot of lovable qualities.
Lord.
Yeah. I came on late and I come in to the podcast and Andrea's in tears. So Andrea, what was going on?
Literally just, by the way, did I say I'm here with Kalli and Lauren? I'm here with Kalli and Lauren.
Hello. We're here. We're already in discussion about how Andrea's heart is today.
The important stuff.
Yes, literally. So I texted the girls and said, hey, just so you guys know, I've been going through some things lately with my house and like work and just all the things. And so I was like, I'm a little bit emotional. And so I knew that I was like on the brink. And then I logged in here and Kalli's face pops up and I just like instantly start crying. And I'm like, Kalli, I'm crying. Like, I'm literally crying. What is going on? Which, if there's any guys listening, you're like, oh gosh, like what? But all the girls are like, yep, that happens. That happens.
I cry the most with my friends. I need them there.
Yeah. I mean, okay. And here's where I think some of it was coming from. I mean, I was already I was filled to the brim. It was just the last couple drops that put me over the edge. But Kalli and I lived together for 5 years and we faced some crises together as roommates.
Some world crises, fires, pandemics.
Yes. We literally evacuated. We evacuated from a fire together because there was a huge fire that was taking over our town. And then and so we evacuated to Sacramento, and then later Kalli and I were living together when COVID hit. So she's just been like, and if anyone who knows her, like I was just telling Lauren, Kalli sucks the stress out of the room. Like
true.
Like a sponge. She just like absorbs it. And I'm just like, oh wow. Like she's just so peaceful and just like, I feel like also together we just can laugh at stuff. We're just like, this is a freaking crap shoot right now. Like what is going on with our life? I was gonna say some other words, but
some other choice
trying to keep it clean. Trying to keep it clean on the pod.
That's good.
But anyway, yeah, when you're just like, what is going on? Like it's all hitting the fan.
Yes.
And Kalli's like one of the best people to have in those kinds of moments. And so I think, yeah, I just miss that. I miss having some like a buddy to go through stuff with, and it really takes the edge off of like hard things when you have somebody like that. So yeah, even when I moved to Austin, I like would send her Marco Polo's and she wasn't even there present, and I would start crying, like just thinking about Kalli.
It's the sweetest thing. She's like, you're not even here and yet you're making me cry.
She's just like the ultimate safe space. Like we have multiple friends that are like, yeah, my counselor was like, picture a really safe person. Like Kalli is like our person that we picture, and we all have like the same one, and it's kind of like, wait, no, that's mine. But she's just that kind of person. So
oh my gosh.
yeah.
Well, just wanted to say, you know, so the people know Andrea is equally that person for me. There have been so many moments where I'm like, I'm going to lose it right now. And Andrea's just like so peaceful and is like, we'll figure it out. And just like she said, like, we'll just laugh about stuff. We're like, it can't get any worse. So we're just gonna like just laugh and just like figure it out. That's what we do. And we might as well just have fun with it because we could be stressed, but we could also have fun. So whatever, it's gonna be fine. And when Andrea moved, I literally cried in my room for like days. And like
so sad.
I definitely went through a grieving stage, probably the next like 6 months, honestly, at least.
I'm so grieving it, I think.
It's rough. It was really rough. All my teachers at school, like I talked to them about my issues and they're like, you just need to like take some time for yourself. It sounds like you're going through a lot. Like, take a bath. That'll be nice. Literally, I had a teacher tell me that. Take a bath.
I don't know if that fixes things, but that's
help.
A sweet idea.
It helped. Then I cried in the bath. It was good.
So yeah.
Yep. So this is what we came into today.
This is what we came into.
Trey had some tears.
Yeah, I had some tears. These two ladies, Lauren like probably doesn't want roommates ever again, but
until it's the husband,
these two are the best roommates I've ever had in my life. So
wow,
yeah, just high praise over here. 5-star review.
Sorry to all the other roommates.
12 out of 10 recommend.
12 out of 10. We can make a website for roommates, like roommates recommendation.
Yeah,
we'll be the highly rated roommates.
Yes,
so good.
Yeah,
Yelp
that's
reviews.
how I feel.
Aww.
I love them both so much.
So good.
We love you.
Okay. Anyway, back to the podcast.
You know,
back to entertaining and helping the people.
Yes, of course.
The people. That's
also,
right.
Last week, I love that we kept calling them the audience, which I mean, it's true, but I noticed that as like the audience.
The audience.
Used that term before. So
just the people listening. Now that it's not just us listening to each other.
Yeah, it's true. So. There's other people here, which is great.
It's more
like
than
parents.
Just us.
Our parents occasionally listen to this.
Yeah, my dad started listening while he drives for Enterprise.
Oh my gosh.
Dad, wow.
My parents are still trying to figure out how to listen to podcasts, so that's awesome.
Just in general.
But it's so
okay.
Good.
So Lauren, do you want to tell us what we're talking about today?
Yes. So our topic for today is, what is it like to date in your 30s? So all three of us are 30. I think we should tell our age for the audience just so they have an idea of the range.
It out.
So I am 35 and a half basically at this point. So kind of crazy. I'm in denial. Andrea, how old are you?
So I'm 33, but basically 34 at this point.
Yeah,
so
it's right around the corner.
Coming. And Cal, how old are you?
I am 30, soon to be 31.
Yeah. So we are all in our 30s. I would say I'm in my mid 30s. I can't believe it. I don't feel it at all. But here we are. But we were just talking earlier this week, and we're like, oh, let's talk about what is it like to date in your 30s as a Christian, as well as we have some lies or myths we want to talk about that we found a lot of women in their 30s believe, and we want to share some of our thoughts on that. So I want to propose the question to the both of you first of what has it been like, or what does it feel like to be someone who's single? I would say single is just not married in your 30s. Like, what has that been like for the both of you?
I would say dating your 30s, I think it adds some different elements. I will say there's a couple things that become easier in your 30s. Like, I remember in my 20s, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe more in my teens, definitely in my teens, I was like, if he finds out I like him, like, this is going to be the worst thing ever. And when you're 30, it's like, I got to tell him because he's not going to pick it up on his own.
Amen. So true.
And then I can move on with my life.
Straight shooter.
Like, that is how I feel in my 30s. I'm like, I'm going to tell him and then I'm going to move on with my life. If you just become a lot more like just, I mean, I think you just have your friends and you have your close relationships and you just give a little bit less of like a crap what everyone else thinks, I guess. And so you're just, you're like, hey, do you like me? Oh, you don't? Okay.
Cool.
Which that's like an oversimplification. I still kind of freak out a little, but it's just a lot more like, I think you get a little more like pragmatic about it. And you're just, you're like, I like you and you're lucky, you know? Whereas like when I was younger, I was like, oh my gosh, that's going to be so embarrassing if he like finds out that I like him. There's no way that he likes me back. So, anyway, I think that like element of it, I guess, makes it easier. And I think too, like, I feel like, I took it for granted in my 20s a little bit. Like if a cute guy who loved Jesus came along, you know, like I'd find something that he didn't have, I guess. And now if there's like a cute, healthy man who like legitimately loves Jesus,
the miracle.
I'm just like, let's talk, you know?
Like, hello there.
Hello there. You have an ESV Bible.
I
No,
see that.
So anyway, I think that part, those things I guess make it easier, but I would also say that there's some things become harder. And I will say with my family, they've done a pretty good job of not putting pressure on me. Like I think my mom definitely wants grandkids, but she doesn't like bring it up all the time, you know? So, but I think just in general, it can feel like, oh, people are kind of like there's kind of more grace in your 20s. They're like, oh, you're figuring it out, you know, and then your 30s, they're kind of like, what went wrong for you?
Yeah.
Is what it
So
feels
true.
like.
Yeah,
You
it does.
know, like they're like, how did you make it this long? Like there must be something in there. Like it almost feels like sometimes they're looking for the reason that you're single.
Yeah.
Which like at this point I've done so much like emotional health and therapy stuff. I'm like, let's talk about why I'm single.
Yeah.
Avoidant attachment style. And I'm like, if you have any feedback, let me know, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like, but it almost feels like sometimes they're like, oh, like things obviously didn't go according to plan for you. So, it feels a little bit like you're under scrutiny, and it kind of, and it's like, I think people have insecurities that maybe are easier to hide. And I think singleness feels like, oh, this is something that like everybody knows, you know? And it feels like, oh, I'm kind of, if you're insecure about it, or you feel like you should be farther along than you are, like it's like, oh, everybody sees that. And so I think that element of it can be difficult too. But that's just, off the top of my head, that's what I'm thinking. But Kalli, did you have anything?
Yeah. Well, something you just said, there's like a vulnerability when you're single. Like there's kind of, I don't know how to explain it better than, it does feel like this very like tender part of your heart that's kind of being exposed to people. Like, like I'm on my own and I'm doing life, and it just feels like you can get all these different reactions from people. People pity you, and you're like, I don't actually need to be pitied. Like I'm living my life and I'm showing up and I'm owning things, and it's great. And people just can have weird reactions about that. Definitely within the church, I think there's so much pressure to get married, like, well, in general, but like especially younger. And I think as you get older and you're not married, there you become almost like an anomaly to some people. And I think it also depends like the area that you're like where you're at physically, like it's just different cultures like based on where you live. But people just, like you said, they can kind of look at you like, well, what went wrong? Like, what happened? That kind of thing. And I remember one time this older man who like went to a church. I didn't even know him super well, but I like ran into him and he's like, "Oh, like, are you married yet?" And I was like, "Nope, I'm not." And he was joking, but he said, "Shame on you." And I was like, "Whoa." Like, and then he kind of like laughed it off. And I was like, I do not receive.
Yeah, what the heck?
And really interesting too, because this man, like I know him a little bit, and just like his marriage is like really rough. And so I'm like, dude, like I am a single woman, like figuring things out, but I am making like healthy choices to the best of my ability. And I'm actually really proud that I haven't like settled in this area of my life and I'm not stuck in something I don't want to be in, which not saying that that's his case, but I'm like, that's
That's
not
some
cool.
people's case.
Like, yeah, that is some people's case. So I was just like, wow, okay. Like that's a way to look at it. But I think in your 20s, there is just kind of an abundance mentality that's easy to tap into of like, oh, well, like I'll meet them at this thing, or like there's always somebody out there. And then as you get older, it just starts to shrink a bit and the people that are available is less. What you're attracted to, like you're not seeing as much of it. So there's just like a lot of different factors. And so I think there just is a pressure as you get older, like, okay, well, what's around? And then you just try to like yeah, your list, I guess, gets a bit shorter in certain areas, because before it was just like, oh, everything's available. And then you're like, well, it's not feeling the same way now. So that's some of the thoughts off of the top of my head. Also, my/Andrea's cat just walked across the screen, and that was really nice. Hi, lady.
Catwoman.
I was going to say, one day we should talk about how we have shared custody of a cat.
Oh, I would love to talk about that.
Oh my gosh. So wild.
But
Lauren,
over to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've said this before, but I wanted to be married at like age 18, 19. I don't know. I was ready to have multiple kids by age 30. And so I remember getting to age 30 and I was grieving like for a week straight, just like crying and so depressed because I realized, oh, I'm coming into my 30s and I have not achieved these things that I want. And as achiever, Enneagram 3, like I want to get to my goals. And I think my biggest goal was to be like a wife and a mom. And so I felt like I had failed myself. And so I was like, I've done all that I can. Yeah, like become the best woman I can, the best Christian I can. So God owes me this and he hasn't. And so I had to really deal with like the past couple of years at different times being mad at God, being mad at myself, being disappointed of just like, oh, I'm not achieving the one thing that I really desire and most want that I feel like will give me the most happiness in life is being a wife and a mom. And so really having to go through these up and downs of like grief and shame the past couple of years has been a huge thing for me. I feel like I'm actually in a really good place of just surrender because it's like the one thing I can't control in my life. And all I can do is like keep surrendering it back to God and realizing like God doesn't owe me anything. He doesn't owe me this. And so and I don't know fully why, but I remember at times I would be in a church culture. I found this more in the Midwest particularly, but it was almost like, oh, you're not valuable to us unless you are married, or you are dangerous as a single woman in the church, or dangerous to married men because you're a single woman. And so automatically, right, when you get married, then you're safe and you're good to go and you have value in a place here. And that was really hard for me. And that's something I've always actually like really pushed against. And I think that's probably why I go more to churches that are very empowering of women as pastors and all that, because I realized, I'm never going to have a place as a single woman unless I'm like a missionary on the mission field. For some reason, you get a good to go card if you're overseas out of America, it seems, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because we need all people, married people, single people.
Yeah.
All members are valuable in the church, but something about a single woman in the church is like a very taboo in some cultures, not all. Thankfully, I'm more a part of churches where I feel very valued as a single woman, but the churches are more tailored towards married people who have families, and there's something really beautiful, and they need a lot of support. But it's like there should be a place for all.
Yeah.
And so that's something I think, like in my 30s, having to be like okay with just, there's going to be these ebbs and flows. Like I remember I went home and my sister just got married, and we were saying hi to people at church, and everyone just like locked eyes on them of like, you're the most incredible thing. And actually no one talked to me except like one lady, and she was like,
oh my gosh.
one lady goes, I'm praying for you, like
Oh my
really
gosh.
concerned, and first of all, super happy my sister got married, so stoked, she's about to have a baby in like a week or two, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But it was almost like this psychology experiment of like, why do I have less value in all of your eyes because I'm unmarried? And why do you pity me and look down on me because I'm unmarried? And it was just like kind of an interesting thing. Like I'm very secure in myself, and I feel very okay with being single because I know this is just my journey. Yeah. But it was just like a weird phenomenon of like, what is going on that people have this mindset? So one more pressure, that's something I've had to like really, and I've heard this from other single friends in their 30s and 40s, is like women who want to have children. And you feel this feeling of like, I'm always doing the math. Like, okay, if I met this guy, I've got a year. And then, personally for me, I would love to have 4 children. I'm like, okay, maybe I can have 2 children now. Like I'm bargaining with God, and I think that's just a reality of like, you have to start realizing your timetable's getting smaller and smaller when it comes to have children. And then you have the feeling of pressure of like, well, I'm going to become less desirable to men then, because men want to have women who can make babies. And this is so like overall assumptions, but it's just like you have those pressures in your brain always in the back of you, where men, I'm so happy for you overall, but you can have babies till you're in your 80s, it sounds like. So there's just those pressures that we're feeling, and I've discussed with a lot of women and empathize for those who are single, who want to have children and are not dating yet, or maybe dating, but that pressure you have of wanting to push that timeline forward when you can't. Like, this is marriage, that's forever. And so but I can feel that and sense that pressure amidst women. So those are some ideas. Any comments on what we've shared so far before we transition into some myths?
Well, I'm glad you talked about a lot of that, because it's really true. Sometimes I feel like I'm like contagious, and people are afraid they're gonna like catch it. So they're like, ooh, don't like make her too much of a leader, because then she might spread singleness all over the church or something. Like, I don't know, like, I mean, not the leaders I have now. I love you, Tim and Naomi. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I've felt that too. Or like, they're not, the single ladies aren't safe. And it's like, okay, like anybody who is not in control of like their sexuality or like flirting or whatever, like doesn't matter if they're married, single, like that, those people are the ones that need to look out for it. It's not like once you're married, you automatically, like we're all responsible for taking care of that stuff. And just because you're single doesn't mean that you're not able to take care of that in a healthy way. Yeah, because I have put more boundaries sometimes on like just different things like texting or whatever, because I'm like, no, I care about your marriage. Like, this isn't even my marriage I'm protecting yours, because I care about marriage. And the line might be different for you, but this is where it is for me.
It's so good.
So it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of like, not that happens all the time, but it has happened before.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, I see marriage the way God sees it, and so I'm gonna fight for it just as much as he is, so anyway. And then I was also going to tell a story too about me at church, because it reminded me. Yours did, Lauren. But we were taking communion one time, and the pastor was like leading us through it, and then he's like, don't take communion alone, like find some people around you or whatever. I forgot exactly what he said, but it was something about like, don't like find people, don't do it alone. And this lady like turns around, and because I'm like sitting there, I think I was just on the edge of a row or something. And she's like, God wants you to know that you're never alone.
So good.
And I was like, it was so funny, because like you come into church and I'm just like happy to be there. Like, I felt great that morning. I'm like worshiping, I'm saying hi to people, and you don't feel lonely at all. And then she says that, and I'm like, I literally have not felt this lonely in like weeks. And it's like this woman trying to be encouraging,
Oh,
like,
no.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, I don't think even people realize sometimes, like, just
Gosh,
not the way to do things. Like, I don't, yeah, like Lauren was saying, like, I don't, it's almost like subconscious or something, the way that they like talk to single people.
Yes.
Sometimes they don't realize like what they're doing. So
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then I do want to address that people are getting married later, or we were talking about like people are starting to get divorced in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
But that we're saying like as Christians, there's like this pressure. And I think there are pressures outside of even the church in your 30s, 40s, if you do want to have children and you're single.
Yeah.
There's different things going on that are different than your 20s, where you do feel like the world is your oyster when it comes to that. What I think another thing has been interesting is I really had to deal with this feeling of like, what's wrong with me that I haven't matched with someone in marriage. And and just feeling like, well, I must be like missing the mark somehow, or and I feel like I had to really just learn to become like confident with just like the process of like, okay, like if I do match with someone, great, but if not, like I can like reevaluate myself, but that's not mean something's wrong with me because of XYZ, and so just having to like trust that process has been something I've had to like really deal with, instead of just like kind of getting mad at myself of like, why can't you figure this out? Everyone else is figuring it out. Because I mean, when you start to see people who are that you were like mentoring, or like I was like, I worked at colleges, and I have all these women I oversaw that were way younger than me, and they're all having babies now. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like these people are like married and having families way before me. And then, everyone around me is, overall married or having children. And you're just like, it's easy to compare or be like, what happened, and having to really be confident of, celebrating, like we talk about their victories, and also knowing like our friends who are married, they need single people in their life. They need girlfriends, and at times I've been like, oh, I don't know if they'll want to be friends with me because I'm not married like them or have babies like them. And of course, I think we all need different stages of like women in different stages. But I realized like, no, they need their single girlfriends too. Like they need someone to support them and like, be there for them. And they also need married women friends as well. And so not like outing myself just because I feel like, oh, they don't want me anymore because I can't relate how they need,
Yeah.
That's so good. It makes me think of one of my friends now. She's so sweet. She just had a baby. And she has a toddler and her life is full, but she does such a good job of like reaching out to me like weekly and just being like, hi friend, like how are you doing, like just thinking about you. And she'll like send me like this, like I don't know, this verse that made her think of me, and she'll like pray for me and just like want to hang out. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever had like a friend who's married with kids do this as well as you have. And we've been friends for like maybe a year, maybe. And I've just been like so touched by that, because I'm like I have a lot of married friends. And so usually it'll be like me reaching out, because I'm like, your life is just a little more full. Like, and I'm aware of that. Like, you have a husband, your kids, like, your time is like just, you have less of it than I do. But the fact that she like will intentionally carve out time for me like every week, I'm like, I feel so loved by that. And it's just really, really sweet. And so I love what you said, Lauren, about like we need each other in our different seasons of life. Like it's so important to have friends that are in the same season, but also it's, I think, equally as important to have friends that are not in the same season. And I think too, sometimes we're in a season and you just want to be in that season with other people. So if you're married, you want married friends and do all the things together. But then you forget about like, your single friends or whatever. And it's like, oh, actually, we all balance each other out and we humanize each other, and we're able to see life outside of our view and outside of this bubble that we're living in, and just enjoy each other as we are, and not be like, oh, I wish you were in a different spot in your life. So I think it's just important to do that. So
I think too, like just to all the married people out there, like, because I feel like sometimes my married friends feel like they need to show up the same way they did when they were single because I'm single. So they're like, oh, I got to figure out somebody taking care of my kids so that I can go to coffee with you and like give you that kind of time. And I'm like, you really don't. Like, I mean, it's nice when that happens, but like if the choice is between like not getting to hang out and because it has to be this perfect thing, you know, then like if the choice is between not getting to hang out and like hanging out with you and your family, like, oh my gosh, I would love to hang out with you and your family, you know.
Totally.
Like and that's honestly like just as much as I love having coffee one-on-one, like I love being around my married friends like family, because it's just like the kids like it's, you know, they're just so innocent, and you're just like I was with my married friends, and they have 2 kids the other day, and I was like, I was so happy to be there, and they were like a little stressed, like they, you know, like it's like, and because just different things were going on, and they were having to like clean up stuff, and you know, and I could tell they're like, oh, we have a guest over, but I'm like, no, I'm so happy that like I've made it to this level of friendship that like you can just be a mess around me, and like I'll just hang out with your kids while you like deal with this stuff. Like I don't know. So just if you're married, don't feel like it has to be this perfect scenario like to hang out with your single friends, because we literally just want to come be with you and your family.
Yeah,
totally.
I feel the same way. Like the amount of times I've been like, can I just come to your house and like be in the corner, like not be in the corner, but like I'll just be part of your life, part of your mess. Like I don't need you to do anything for me. I just want to like be here and hang out. And when people do allow that space for you, it does feel like such a privilege, because you're like, I know that this is kind of vulnerable for you, but it just makes you feel like family, which is so precious.
Yeah, so good.
Sure. I'm like, hand me a kid if you need to, you know, like I'll wash his face off, all the carrot like baby food or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever needs to be done.
Good.
Yeah, whatever needs to be done, I'm here to help.
Yeah. We are going to transition to some lies we want to diffuse about dating in your 30s. And we have a whole list of them. We'll see how far we get. But we're just going to share some thoughts about these lies that are lies and what we believe like is actual truth and what our thoughts are about this.
Part of the reason we're doing this is because we realize there's a lot of pressure. Like you can put a lot of pressure on yourself when you're single. And so we kind of want to alleviate some of that pressure because the more lies you're believing, the more pressure you're going to feel. And so if you break some of those, it's going to break some of that pressure because you're going to realize like, oh, actually, I'm okay. Like, do I want to still be married? Yes. But like, am I okay without that? Like for as long as that needs to be, like, yes, I am okay.
That's good. Yeah. So the first, lie that we wanted to talk about was my life won't begin until I am married. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's ridiculous.
Let's just laugh at
let's just oh yeah, a little throwback. Let's just laugh at that. I have a really good friend and mentor who is basically like my role model in this area. But she was in her 30s and single and had not had like much dating in the last, I don't know, it's probably like 10 years or something. And she's like one of those people, like there's so many people like this where you're like, you are like have everything, like you're beautiful, you're funny, you're talented, and you're really like, which this is funny too, how people are like, how are you not dating somebody? Like the three of us here, we get it. But she just just like us. But she just lived her life. Like she'd go traveling all the time. She had really deep community. She had like a beautiful little apartment. And I just looked at like every area of her life and it was just like flourishing. And she really wanted to be dating somebody. And she was very like honest about that and real and like spoke about it like several different places. But she did not let that hold her back. And she did not let that like stop her from doing anything. And honestly, I think that is probably why, or it's one of the reasons like her husband was so drawn to her. She's married now. It's amazing. They have like 2 kids. But he was just drawn to like how like vivacious she was. She just owned her life and did not let anything hold her back. And it's just been really inspiring to me. And she's someone that when I'm having like really low days, like, are there any men out there who love Jesus and me? I will text her or call her and she's like the sweetest and she's like British. She'll be like, oh babe, but like, and she'll pray for me or she just gets it. That's more one of the biggest things is she like gets it and she's just like, I'll just hold space for you and I don't have answers necessarily, but like I love you and I'm believing for you and it's just the best. So yeah, that's my thought on if you can, live your life without being married.
Yeah. That's so good. I think for me too, this was definitely real in my 20s, this lie. I think I just had that in my head. Like once I meet my husband, that's when my life is really going to start. And I didn't like, I feel like it's just been an unraveling since then of realizing like, oh, that was something I was waiting for, like until marriage, like this, like there's just so many things where it's like, oh, I was waiting to figure out finances, or I was waiting to like figure out how to be more outgoing, or like I was going to try to just find somebody who was good at that so that I don't have to be. And I just realized like, oh, I'm waiting. Like I'm just waiting around and I'm not owning my life right now, and I'm not owning my choices right now, and I'm not stewarding what I have. I'm just waiting for this person to come along and like fix it all so my life can start. And I think I just realized like, which is like sounds like a cliche like movie line, but my life had already started,
like, so cheesy. I'm so obsessed.
Cheesy, but it's true. Like you're like, oh, like we're doing this, like it's going, this train is moving, like we're
then moving.
like I'm like, okay. And so I feel like late 20s, early 30s has just been me like tackling, not all the areas at once, but like one area at a time. Like, okay, like how can I own this? Because it didn't happen that I met somebody at 24 like I thought it was going to. So like, all right, how am I going to figure out, like, how am I going to own my finances? How am I going to get better at meeting people and being outgoing and like, how am I going to take responsibility instead of waiting to meet somebody to like magically make me better at all these things? Because honestly, that doesn't even happen. Like,
exactly.
I think you see enough of your friends get married that you're like, shoot, he didn't fix everything for you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, like new perspective here.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I think for me, I've definitely had this like fantasy that my life will just be way better when I get married. Like it's gonna be like double the fun. Because I'm now, even as you all are talking, I'm like, okay, I really have still gone after a ton of things over the years, like moving out to California on my own, or doing missions on my own, or the past couple years becoming a coach, which was like a very hard achievement to like go into kind of a man's world and so much pushback and become a CrossFit coach. But I was like, okay, I like have kept moving forward. But I think for me, I kept thinking, oh, I'm going to be like less lonely or more confident if I, have this person next to me. Kind of my ride or die is going to give me that extra, have my back in these hard situations as I'm going after things in life. And so, and so I think I had to realize like that was my friends or my family that had my back. It just wasn't this perfect, like my guy that had it. And so I think there was even like a grieving of like, oh, I wish there was my husband that could have been a part of all these stages, and just like releasing that of, okay, that person didn't get to be a part of like all of these breakthroughs in my life, or these really exciting things that were really hard for me to overcome, like getting my master's, but knowing, okay, I'm going to keep going forward even if like I don't have that person. And I think there is that feeling of like, oh, your life is easier because you have this companion with you. But we know from our conversations with married people, there's still so many issues, and your partner does not solve everything for you. If anything, someone says like, depending on where your baggage is at in life, it's like double the baggage of life that you have to go through. And so, because you're taking two lives with their crap. And so, it's like, and bring it together. And so there's more explosions, if anything, but you get to do it together, which is great. So I don't really believe like that's just like the cure-all for stuff. Like you really, like we talk about, you have to take ownership of your life. Like you got to own your crap. You've got to deal with things, because that is, you're literally trying to look for a God in a sense, which is God himself that should be fixing your crap with you, not your husband. That is so unfair. And so, so that was my thoughts. Wow, I got passionate about that.
Woo, that's good.
Yeah,
nobody can handle being in that spot, like you were saying.
It's just unfair. Not fair.
It's unfair to put someone in that spot.
Yeah. Kalli, what was the next lie that you wanted to discuss?
So this is one that's come up for me a pretty good amount, to be honest. And it's, have I done too much work on myself?
Okay, explain more.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you can look around at people dating and you can see people not taking it seriously, or just like the way that they live their lives. Like a lot of people do live their lives like, oh, like when I meet somebody, then I will get my crap together. Then I will make these decisions and do all these things to like improve myself. And that's just not how I've gone about my life. And the three of us have not. We've all chosen very different paths, but we've been really intentional with the choices we've made, with getting healthy. Like we've all done some degree of like therapy, of counseling, and just have really been like, okay, what is the crap in my life, and how can I go after it? How can I be the most whole version of myself I possibly can? And with the Lord, like I'm always trying to grow. I'm trying to like just follow him to the best of my ability. I love him so much. And so basically in my head, I'm like, every year I'm getting better. And I really believe that.
Love that confidence.
I know. I take notes from Kalli sometimes.
She's getting better.
Better, like a fine wine.
Fine wine for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so, and yeah, in my head, I'm like, every year I'm getting better. And like we were talking about, like your options do feel like they're getting smaller. And the list that I have, I'm like, honestly, sometimes I find it's hard to even find somebody like I'm attracted to, or like we like get along in these certain areas. And so I'm like, the idea of like finding somebody that they don't have to like match me in certain area, like every area, but like we can like grow from each other and like challenge each other and stuff like that, it starts to feel like a big ask, and it starts to feel like almost impossible at times. Or there's just been people where I'm like, oh, like, yeah, there is some interest there, and then we start getting to know each other, and then just like giant like disconnects or red flags, and I'm like, okay, like, so that does come up for me, and it is something I have to talk about with the Lord and just wrestle with and figure out. But yeah, that's one of my big ones.
That's good.
Yeah.
Andrea, or Lauren, one of you.
I mean, I was just going to say, Kalli, with the way I introduced you at the beginning of this podcast, I think everyone's going to be like, yeah, she is really incredible.
She's too good.
Yeah.
She's too good.
But Lauren,
Yes.
I mean, I think my thoughts on that too is, I think you all know me. I'm very empathetic. So I'm kind of like, we're all messed up. Like,
yeah,
I mean, that's true.
I'm like, I'm messed up. Like, I think that's probably helped me a little bit with like the dating, where if anything, I'm like, should I even be talking to that person? Because I'm almost like too open. So, but yeah, I think there has been a feeling of like, no one is anyone really going after these things. I only feel like sometimes married men are and are really going after that wholeness, and so they're already married. And so yeah, I think for me though, it's helping me date healthier because I'm taking care of my emotional and mental and physical health. Like, I think I am becoming more, there's like these healthy standards, and I feel like I'm healthier in my dating relationships because of that. And so that's something I do feel like is a positive of like taking care of myself. But I do, you know what I mean? It's like I see these really powerful independent women that are single, and I'm like, how are you single? But there's nobody. I almost look on the outside of like my girlfriends. I'm like, well, they're just too good for these guys.
What's available. Yeah.
What's available. But then at the same time, like, there's no perfect, you know?
Yeah.
And so what's this good enough? In a sense, I never want to talk like that. Like, you're good enough. But I think it is that openness of like, well, do we have the same values? Then maybe they don't have to perfectly match that person to be married and have a good marriage. So
yeah. I felt like too with the somebody I dated, I really tried to focus on like what are his strengths, because I did feel like I was further along in emotional health for sure. But I was like, honestly, he's farther along in finances. Like, he knows how to invest better than I do. And so anyway, sometimes I try to figure out like, okay, he could think that I'm stunted in like these other areas, you know?
Totally.
While I'm like, but I'm killing it in relationship, which is the thing that you and I have to be in. So you're welcome for that. Lauren, did you have another one that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, definitely. So the next lie that we were talking about is the lie, I won't impact God's kingdom like I would if I was married. So what are your thoughts on that lie?
You probably won't. No, sorry. It's terrible.
You're thinking that because it's true.
Unless you're on the mission field, like we
we
discussed.
said.
It's true.
Yeah.
Those single women really can do more because you don't have to take care of the kids, the
Right.
husband, make them
Yeah.
food. All you can do is
Totally.
preach the gospel.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's true.
You can have 1 million orphans
Yep.
because you don't take care
Mother
of 1 million
Teresa.
orphans. Yeah.
That's
Mother
right.
Teresa, example A.
Yeah. Well, I first want to say this one feels very real. Like, I remember even the difference between having someone I was dating and being single. I was like, I kind of feel like we're a little bit more invited into certain spaces because I'm at
Yeah.
least on my way to marriage, you know?
Yeah. It's like a popularity thing. You're like, you know?
Yeah, it was kind of weird because I remember then I was single and I was like, whoa, I feel like a little bit less invited, which I don't know, maybe that was in my head, but um it's an interesting thing. Like and I felt that like with church specifically.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it does feel like it feels like the godliest thing you can do is be married. And if you can't figure out how to do that, then you can do your best to impact the kingdom, but it's not going to be at the level that anyone who's married can. Like, that feels real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I have like too many more thoughts on this, but it does just feel like there's just so many more opportunities for you if you're married, and if you're single, they're very slim. And
Yeah.
it's immediately people think like, oh, missionary. We're just like, yeah, okay, there's a lot of other things that are available to me that's not the only thing. So it just feels like, not a lot of opportunities if you're not married in that way. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it really depends on the church that you're a part of.
Yeah.
Because there are churches that are very much just like, you need to be married or you're dangerous or you have no value, because there's churches that really only value the male's voice. And so women's voices are maybe a little bit more able to be amplified if there is marriage status next to you. And so I think I've thankfully been a part of churches that are very for women. And so it's been, I'd say, easier to be able to have a voice in those spaces. But I felt that pressure in different spaces of like, yeah, you're just not going to impact as many lives without that other person next to you, or have as much of a say in things unless you have that man next to you. Which I'm all for marriages impacting God's kingdom, but there's little scripture that says like, it's, if you're able to, it's better to be single than to be married, because you do have more time to be able to, in different spaces, like share God's love or do things for his kingdom. So I mean, there's both, and I think there's value in marriage and how it impacts God's kingdom, and there's value as a single person. I don't think one is better than the other. And I think what we've done in the church is elevate marriage is way better.
Yeah.
You know, than being single. And I'm like, I think there's just times for both. And so
Yeah.
and not one is more valuable. And I think there's, what I've seen is when I see healthy Christians, whether single or married, that's the most impactful. People who actually like love God, love others, are humble, that serve, that are promoting, those around them. I'm like, that's the impactful people, whether they're married or whether they're single. And when you have two healthy single people that get married, oh my gosh, you're going to change the world, because you're actually like representing the heart of Christ. And so I do, when I see healthy marriages, oh my goodness, it is so powerful. And so I get that. And I'm like, yes, like that is a display of God's love. Like when I see good parents, when I see good marriages that love Jesus, but then also when you see single people who love the Lord, you're like, you're killing it. You're doing amazing, like sharing God's love. So I would say there's different seasons. Not one is better than the other. It's about, are there healthy people coming together?
Yeah.
So good, Lauren.
Yeah. And we're all just responsible to steward what we've been given. Like, I think that's the other thing I see is like there are leaders I respect that came from all kinds of backgrounds, and like they maybe didn't have all the resources, or they weren't like equipped in the way that you would think somebody needs to be, but they're like killing it. So it's and I think it doesn't have to just be marriage, but there's a lot of ways that you could disqualify yourself. And the people who are killing it are the ones that don't disqualify themselves. They just are like, nope, like this is what I've been given, and I'm gonna serve God and He's free to use. If I'm coming to you, God, with two loaves, wait, 2 fishes, 5 loaves,
5 loaves, 2 fish,
5 loaves, 2 fishes, like that's what I have to bring, knowing that God can feed 5,000 people with it if He needs to. So we all have like our thing that feels like a disqualification, but we just bring it to Him, and then He does things beyond what we ever imagined. So
yeah,
that's
definitely
so good. Yes,
so good. We are not defined by our relational status. Even Jesus was single.
It's true.
So, in his 30s.
Say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, he was basically me, 33.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Actually, when you said that earlier, I was like, just like Jesus, 33. Let's go.
It is weird to outlive Jesus. I'm like, wow, that's gonna be different when I turn 34.
Yeah,
but anyway,
that man.
We have one more.
Yes.
And speaking of Jesus, it's that Jesus cares more about other people's love story than mine.
If you're single in your 30s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or single.
Yes. Or single.
Or and I think it can also feel like God forgot me. Like I've felt like that many times. I'm like, but remember me?
I'm over here.
You all, did Jesus forget us?
Never.
Never.
I'll speak into that.
Yes.
I've really had to deal with anger with God about this, because it's something that I'm like, you gave me this desire for a really good thing, like to be married and have kids, to be a mom, to follow God's kingdom. And I think I, for years, was like, you owe me big, like, and also I would be like, you gave me this, like, take it away then. And it's not, it's just, if anything, it's growing, and my heart is getting like lovesick of like sadness.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's like so down to like your connection with Christ. And I think God really cares that we're real with Him, that we're honest, because He's always going after the root of our heart. He's going after having all of us. And so I had to really go after even just being real with Him. I'm like, God, I don't think you care. Like, I don't think you care about my heart. Like, I don't think you care about me, and really having to surrender that. And I've had ups and downs with me and Jesus. Like, I've always been talking to Him, always connected, love Him, following Him, a part of the church, believing in, scripture. But at the same time, it's like I'd see there'd be times where I'm really distant, because I'm like, well, we've talked about this, and you don't listen. Like, you don't listen to my heart. Like, you really don't value it. And having to really wrestle with, like, are you a good dad? Like, are you a good father that really cares? And when I started to take this, I would say, like, this is like the ultimate thing I want, and release it to Him, I had my hand in a fist, and I opened up my fist and realized, like, you have provided so much in my life. My life is actually like really beautiful. Also, would I choose you even if I'm single the rest of my life? Or would I choose you if everything else fell apart? Because there's so many other things that people will walk away from God. Is like, we'll walk away from God all the time just because I didn't get the job I wanted, but it's like, oh, I'm going to choose you because I actually believe you are who you say you are in scripture, that you're good, that you're loving, that you have provided. And I think when I started to flip the script of like, God provides in so many ways in people's lives. Like, I've seen Him fulfill so many prayers and ways, and like show love to so many people around me. I realized, like, oh, He does love, like, oh, He does care. And I'm being selfish and making this a transactional relationship about me and what I want when I want it. And really just being a baby, like, really just putting God of like, I'm not going to serve you unless you do X, Y, Z. And that's not how it works. God's God. I'm His child. And so it's really like having to tenderize my heart of the character of God, and just realize, like, my ways are not His ways. And and really celebrating like the good things he has provided instead of the one thing that I want that he hasn't given when I wanted it. And I was like, that's a really bad theology. Like I've had to really check myself and the way that I think about God and his goodness. And so, yeah, I just went on a tangent, but those are some
so
thoughts.
good.
Preach.
Yeah. This is one I've wrestled with a lot. A picture I used to get in my mind was like, you know, you'd go up to like, you're like waiting in line for something and, you know, finally get up to like, you know, the ride or like the door you're supposed to go into or whatever. And it was like Jesus would like come up and be like, oh, just a second. And like make me wait and cut all these other people in front of me. And that was an image I had for a long time, being like, I don't understand, Jesus. Like, it feels like my turn was like, you know, 8 years ago, and you're letting all these people cut in front of me. And there was also kind of this thing I picked up where I was like, I think it's because you know that I'm patient and you know that like I will wait and like I can handle it. That was a big thing. I was like, I think you think I can handle this. So I'm going to handle it while all these other people get to experience this thing that I've been waiting for so long. And yeah, it's just been something I've had to wrestle with the Lord. And like Lauren said, like it always comes back to like, do I believe that you're good? Do I believe that you have the best in mind for me? And I fully believe that you gave me this desire. And I don't think it was because you're cruel and you're like, I'm going to give you something that you're never going to have. I don't believe that at all. But it is turning out differently than I thought. And I get to choose how I respond in this moment and how I react to these people getting married before me or getting in relationships. And it is an opportunity to like lean into celebration and lean into like sacrificial like love for people and being like, you know what, like there are very real feelings that are coming up for me, but in this moment I'm going to choose to love these other people and celebrate their moment because they've also been waiting too. Like it doesn't matter how long, like when you're 20, whatever, you're like, I've been waiting my whole life. Like it doesn't matter. Like we've all been waiting in our own ways. Or some people, if they haven't, like awesome. Like that's amazing. But just I think, yeah, when it all comes back to like comparison, like, yeah, we're all gonna fall short or we're all gonna be envious or whatever. But just leaning into like, no, Jesus, you're so good. You're so good. And you, at the end of the day, marriage is a gift, which we've talked about, and it's not anything that you owe me. Yeah. So those are some of my feelings and thoughts. Yeah.
So good.
Let's hear it, Trey.
I love that both of you like kind of talked we're just really honest because I think you have to be honest with God. Like if you're thinking this, if you're like, hey, it feels like you forgot me and I'm angry and like you can't just stuff all that down to be a good Christian, quote unquote. Like being a good Christian is being honest about your relationship with him, you know, and it's not that like we've all said this, but like it's not that you're not submitting to him, but if you're not honest with how you're being affected by him and how you're feeling, like it's you can't get anywhere until you are truthful about it. And so yeah, I think with this one I've been really truthful with God, and I think for me it's felt a lot like it feels like it feels like you want me to just figure this out by myself. I get into like orphan mentality with this a lot. I'm like, oh, it's all up to me. I have to figure this out. You're not helping. You're busy helping everybody else. Like,
yeah.
Like Santa Claus, you know?
Yeah. I'm like, I've gotten so good at this. I'm on a podcast about it. No, just kidding. Because I've spent so much time trying to figure it out. That's like a little bit of a joke, but not really. But but and I just like I just sit there and I just let it all out. And but then I also I'm like, okay, like I've listed all the evidence that I'm an orphan on my own. Like, what is the evidence that God's actually helping me? And I shift my brain to think about that, because I'm like, what, like, you get to pick what you focus on, right? And so then I'll start to see like, okay, actually you really helped me trust myself here with this person, and you brought people into my life to speak this thing at the right time. And I'll start seeing the ways that he's been a father to me. And I'll also be like, okay, I've been looking at how the comparison is unfair on my end, but how I've looked at the ways I've been shorted. So now I'm going to look at the ways that I have gotten stuff that I didn't deserve, like I'm like, oh my gosh, my family is like incredible. Like I'm like, I just feel like I've been gifted with like one of the best families in the world. And there's so many people that don't have that, and they don't even like, I mean, I guess they could marry their way into one, but like, it's
We
just
hope
like,
that for all.
yeah, we totally hope that for you if that's your story. But I'm like, what are the ways that my life's unfair? Like, what are the ways somebody would look at me and be like, dang, God obviously cares about her. I think those are some things that I've like tried to do to help get through some of those lies. But
so good.
Yeah, did you guys have any thoughts or last final comments as we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I think these lies can like cripple you, and there's so many different, I think all three of us at different times have had to write down the lies that we're believing that feel so true in the moment. And we've had to like be like, God, what do you say about this? Like, what is actual truth about these areas? And so I encourage any of you listening, like, write down the lies that you're believing about yourself when it comes to dating, relationships, marriage, about yourself. Like, I think one of mine was like, what's wrong with me was a lie I believed for so long. And then I had to be like, just sit with God and be like, God, what do you say about me? And then ask me even my close friends, like, that speak truth into me, like, what do you think about me? And I know that's really vulnerable and that would take a lot of risk, but just getting truth poured into you of like, what does God really say about all these things? What does God say? What do your friends say to those that love you? My favorite, I'm lucky I have parents that are just awesome and cheer me on and are like, you're the best. Like, and you need those people to just keep you going and keep you sane in a sense as you're just trying to, live life to the fullest and to the best. And so, those are some thoughts when it comes to singleness in your 30s specifically, or in singleness in life right now where you do want to date and get married.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it, but I think just being as honest as you can with the Lord. My friend that I mentioned, who's like a mentor to me, she was always like, maybe you just need to really hash it out with the Lord with where you're at. I was like, I have been. And she's like, okay, good. Like, keep doing it.
Keep hashing.
And just wanted to validate, like, if you've been, in the dating scene for a long time or whatever, like, it can feel really exhausting. Like, that is something that I've been like, oh, like, okay, here we go again. Like, if something fell through and you're like picking yourself back up again, like, your heart can just feel really exhausted. And so that was something that my friend, she's like, maybe you just need to come to the Lord and be like, you know what, I'm really tired. Like, I'm really tired of hoping again and healing again and like all of these things, but like, I'm coming to you with this. And so just wanted to say, if you're out there and you're tired, like, you're not alone, and we get it and we see you, but we also believe that there's good things ahead in store for you. Like, we fully believe that, and we're here for you and we love you. And then I have a cool story to share, which I can either share right now or at the end, if Andrea, you wanted to add anything while we're in this vein.
I was just gonna say, like, just there's a lot of things about being single that are actually really commendable.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry if you have felt less than in any environment, because I see so much strength in my single friends. Like, I am like, dang, you have figured out taxes and careers and finances and
Car
getting
stuff.
your car taken care of, and like all these things you've figured out yourself. And that, like, some people might be like, that's not a huge deal, but it is.
It
like,
is.
you have been doing this on your own, and that's amazing. Like, it takes so much strength, and probably you could have settled for somebody by now. Like, and it takes a lot of strength to be like, no, I'm gonna wait for what I feel like I deserve. And like somebody at least who like values me in the way that like God values me, so there's so much strength inside of you. If you've been single for a while, like, it's sometimes, I mean, it's pretty easy to just like conform to society's standards or norms, and I think it takes strength to not do that. So I'm proud of you. And if you screwed up some relationships in the past, and like, or you've made mistakes, like, honestly, so have all the married people. Like, they have messed up. Like, none of them have done anything perfectly. Like, it's not like they are healthier than you and that's why they're married. Like, it's like, no, they have their own stuff. Like, they just also got married. Like, so anyway.
So good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kalli, you want to tell us the story?
Okay. So, like, a couple weeks ago, I got invited to this birthday party of a girl I've like just been getting to know. And it was at her parents' house, and I didn't really know who all was coming, but I go, and it was just like such a precious birthday party. This girl, she actually turned 30 and she's married, great family. But I was just like so blown away by how, first of all, they barely knew me, but they like welcomed me with open arms. And at the end of the night, I was like going home, and it dawned on me, I was like, I was the only single person there. And I didn't realize that at all.
That's huge.
And it was mostly her family, but literally everybody was like married or a couple. And I was like, I felt so loved. And like so many people took time to like come and like talk to me specifically. Or if I was like coming into a conversation, people would include me right away. And I just felt so loved. And I took note of that. And I thanked the family later. I was like, thank you so much. Like, I felt like just one of the family, and they were like, oh, that's great. Like, we're so glad. But that is a really big deal. And so if you're out there and you are married or whatever, just like loving your single friends, bringing them into spaces, like it goes a really long way. And
it does.
We appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, love you all so much.
Love you all. Guys. Thanks for listening if you tuned in, and we hope you feel encouraged, and we're proud of you. Good job. Married, single, we're proud of all of you.
We're proud of everyone.
Keep it up. Keep it up, society.
Yeah.
And we will
vote for me.
Oh my gosh.
2024.
I'll vote for you.
I know. I would definitely vote for you.
Anyways. Okay.
We will catch you on the podcast next time.
Signing off.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.